Hello everybody, it's me, just me, Paul, by myself, Vinego Art Box. How are we all doing tonight? Check in, say hey, how's it going? Jenny had something come up tonight, so, she volunteered to do makeup and for the local community theater, and so she's not going to be able to hang with us. So it's just going to be me, and let me know how everything sounds. I've got a new microphone I'm using tonight. And I just want to know if it sounds good to you guys. Maybe if it's a little too loud, let me know. I can make an adjustment. And I wore the wrong glasses, but it looks like, we're doing good. All right. Good. Okay, so welcome everybody. Welcome to our live stream tonight. We're going to be painting Winterfield. I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on the chat and let you guys know, if you guys interact. I wore the wrong glasses, so I'm going to have a hard time reading the screen. And but outside of that, it's going to be interesting because it's been a long time since I've done a live stream by myself. And part of the thing that's difficult is actually like keeping an eye on questions and things like that, and also keeping conversation going. So I'm going to do my best to get that going. I've got a cup of coffee brewing. My French press is getting ready to go. I've got something to drink if I get thirsty. No adult beverages tonight. So anyway, let's take a look at the painting. I've got some new controllers here. Whoops, here we go. Let's switch over. There we go. All right. Here's our, I got devices hanging out. Sorry about that. Let's get that fixed. Okay. All right, so here's our blank canvas we're going to get started with, and here is our original painting, Winterfield. And this one was a lot of fun for me. I feel like every year when we create the new paintings, I end up doing like basically, I feel like there's about 2 or 3 paintings that at the end of each year that I feel like, wow, I really feel very happy with this particular painting, and this is one of them. I mean, well, it's pretty easy to say that it's January, so, but anyway, how hard would I say this one is? I would say anybody should try it. It could be considered what I would call a difficulty level of maybe of about, let's call it maybe a 6. It's really when we start diving into all the individual steps and everything that goes into it, it's really not as hard as it looks. So one of the things that's difficult with people learning how to paint is at first paintings you look at the finished painting and it feels very intimidating. But when we start breaking it down into all the individual little steps, and we try not to get too concerned about the finished painting, and we just really kind of focus on the journey, then we have a better opportunity to really just kind of break it down into manageable bits and pieces. And we're going to start doing that. I see Kim's in here, Debbie, and I got to lean in because I cannot read the other name. Andy. Hi, Andy. Good to see you. I couldn't tell. I kind of was in a hurry, and then, sorry guys, it's been kind of a flustering afternoon because I also got stuck in traffic on my way here. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Yeah, you can do this. Absolutely. We can all do this. This is not, I don't think it's, I know I get accused of like, oh yeah, it's easy for you to say you painted it originally and you've been painting for close to 30 years. So yeah, I get it. But we're going to break it down as simple as we can. I will reference our instructions a little bit. In fact, I got to look and see what was the first. All right. Interesting. Okay, so what we're going to start off with is normally we start out by doing the lightest colors first in the sky, and tonight we're actually going to kind of start with getting this kind of tone. And the color, I know everybody's monitors are different or computers are different, televisions are slightly different. The color I really want you to think about when you're thinking about the sky is the color of rose gold, and I think we're all pretty familiar with rose gold at this point. It's pretty prominent, and it has had its popularity. I think maybe it's not as popular as it was a couple years ago, but that's kind of the color I want you to have in mind as we're working through most of this painting. And let's go ahead and get started. Let's toast. Let's go. Let me get my empty coffee cup, or no, I'll get my liquid death sparkling water, and I'll toast you all. Cheers. That's good stuff. Not a sponsor, wish they were, but hey, I guess I got to plug them more and get their attention a little bit more. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start off with our biggest paintbrush. And I will keep one eye on the monitor and see how things are going. And what I'm going to start off doing is we're going to start making a very light violet that's a little bit on the warm side. So I'm going to start with just a touch of turquoise. Oh, let's talk about our colors. We got turquoise, black, white, bright red, and raw sienna. We used all these colors last week. The raw sienna, again, it's actually a brown, so it has a tendency of not making things green when we mix them with black or turquoise. So I'm going to start off mixing those three together. I'm going to go a little bit more turquoise, a little bit more red. And we're going to add some white to it. That's pretty light. Let's go a little darker. Jenny and I mix colors a lot different. If you guys have watched sessions with her, she has a tendency of mixing a lot more paint, and I tend to do smaller batches and mix more frequently. So basically what we're going to start doing, I got to read my instructions because the instructions don't look like what I typed up, but you know, it is. Yeah, it is. So we're going to paint up about 2 inches. And you'll notice as I'm doing this, I might just move this up. As I do this, my brush is moving in all different directions. I think that's kind of important for doing a landscape. The only time it would be different is if you were doing like a rainy scene and you want it to feel like the movement of the rain in the wind is going at a specific angle. But in this case, we really want to just kind of keep the non-patternness of nature. And I'm just going to start now blending some white in. I think I accidentally picked up a little tiny bit of red there. Yeah, we're just going to take this color and we're just going to blend up. And at any point in time, if you feel like you need to add a little bit more color, you can. I think I personally tend to like paintings that are a little bit more subdued in color, but I totally get it if you like a lot more color. And that's the beauty of painting and doing our classes. It's not like I'm not going to come knock on your door and see your painting and say, well, did you copy my painting exactly? And if you didn't, you're not doing a good job. No, I don't care about that. What I care about is that you're learning a little bit about painting and you're having fun with the process. Having fun with the process is probably the most important thing. Sure, we're all going to get frustrated at times, but that's okay. That's what reminds us that this is not just, if painting was easy, everybody would do it, right? So there's a little cliche, you know, if just such and such was easy, everybody would do it. But it's not. So we get to be the select few who have taken the time and decided, I want to give a good go at this. I want to make this happen. Thanks for joining us. All right. I'm just going to kind of work. I've got a little extra color in my brush. We're going to work over a lot of this painting, and we don't really talk about it a lot as much as we should, but a lot of the first part of this process is just getting paint on the canvas. There's they call it the underpainting process. There's a lot of artists, and I do it when I'm doing more of like a gallery or a portfolio piece or a commission piece, where they'll paint the whole canvas in some other color, a base tone, pretty solidly. And There's a few reasons for that. These come pre-primed with what's called gesso, but I don't feel like gesso, I don't feel like the paint really mixes with gesso, or excuse me, lays on top of gesso the same as it does over paint. And you can tell when you start painting and you're using a brand new canvas, you can tell how the paint reacts with the surface of the canvas versus after you've had some paint on it and the paint has a chance to dry. I'm getting my coffee going. All right, there we go. All right, so next thing, I'm just going to kind of bring this up. I think I said in the instructions kind of about 2/3 of the way. It doesn't really matter. We're going to be painting over a lot of this anyway. I am now not going to worry about rinsing my brush right now. Just going to take some of our raw sienna, a tiny little dot of red. Don't want much. We don't want much. Well, Aaron Neville reference if you guys didn't catch it. I'll probably be a little bit more toned down and reserved tonight than I usually am, because usually Jenny and I have a lot of inside jokes that we, or just life experiences that we kind of joke around about and laugh about, and that's always fun. We've been together, gosh, almost. We've known each other for 30 years come September. So we've got a long history and lots of fun things we can talk about. So I'm just going to do the same basic process. We're just getting a little bit of color and then we're using white. I used to tell people in the studio, it's like, this is the passenger waiting at the bus stop and the white is the bus. And the bus is going to come along and pick the passenger up and help carry the passenger further down the canvas. I don't know why I came up with that analogy, but it works for me. I got some little bit of our purple popping through, but that's okay. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. And I'm just going to bring this color down. And one of the things you'll notice I'm doing is I'm kind of painting out ahead of the paint and then bringing it back into the wet paint and then back down a bit. If you've got a lot of paint on your brush, just be careful that you're not, getting too much. You really want a lot of this area where they come together to be really dominated by white on the brush, because that helps them mix together without creating offensive tones. But these colors actually work out pretty well anyway, so you don't really have to worry too much about situations with the paint. Getting like a weird green or something where it doesn't belong. This all works. I'm not using a ton of paint on my brush. Feel free to ask any questions. I am keeping an eye. There is a delay, so if from the time I am live to the time it takes to get to you to the time the message gets back to me, sometimes 15-20 seconds or so. So you can pause at any time and pick back up. This will, if you're new, by the way, I want to say welcome to any new people. I know that this is the first subscription box that goes out after Christmas, and a lot of people are getting their gift subscriptions, and this is their first or second attempt with our paintings. And I just want to say welcome, thank you for joining us. And I know a lot of you will be watching this afterwards, so good luck to you. I believe in you. We can do it. All right. So one of the things I want to do, I'm going to go ahead, we're going to have a sun over here, so I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of extra white real quick. And I'm not really trying to paint the sun, but I'm going to add a little white glow. And the one thing you really want to do, and I say one thing a lot, and I probably need to work on adding to my vocabulary, so I've got other phrases, but we do this a lot where we just are adding a glow. And one of the things I've noticed when we had the studio open is a lot of times this glow, when we start painting in here, has a tendency, I'm going to zoom in real quick so you guys can see that a little better. People have a tendency of really ending up with a pretty harsh circle instead of taking that color, and just kind of what you do is you just play along the edge of it and keep working it out so it gets just a little bit more. And we'll come back a little bit later when it has a chance to dry a bit and we can add a little bit more white to it. Let me zoom back out a bit. You can see the whole canvas. There we go. All right, perfect. Yeah, so this is looking good. What we're going to do next is we're going to kind of, this area that's the, let me bring the original painting in. So this area that's the sky and this back, we haven't really decided. Well, good. We'll all get there together. Get there together. By the way, if you guys are new, also we have a great Facebook group. It's called the Go Box Art Crate group, not our page. And lots of people post their pictures, and it's a great place to go in and get a little pat on the back if you're not feeling 100% perfect about your painting. Jenny's pretty active on there. I try to pop in a couple times a week, but we really have a good community growing there. But this, oops, almost accidentally clicked the end stream button with my phone, or with my coffee cup. That would have been bad. Anyway, so this area right here, this transition, whether it's clouds or it's a hillside in the background, I think it feels like a hillside in the background. We're not too concerned about this getting, being like really intense. So when we start working back and forth in these areas, it's okay if we're painting over it. We want that to be soft. If we put a lot of detail, it takes the focus away from the foreground. And this painting, really, the focal point is really just kind of in this pocket right here, and that's what we want to focus in on. And it's just like using an old camera where you use it to focus, and you focus in on one thing, like right here, and then everything else kind of blurs. Well, we kind of do the same thing with painting, where we just don't want to put as much emphasis on the perimeter stuff. So let's go ahead and mix up we're going to go back to our lavenderish kind of color. A little red, a little turquoise, a little bit of raw sienna. What the raw sienna does for this is it tones it down from being too intense. Get a little bit more going on here. A little tiny bit more. There we go. So it keeps it from being too like purple. I mean, it's still purple, but it keeps it more, a little bit more neutral. So I'm just going to start right along here, and you can do as much contour as you want. But what I want to do with this is I'm just going to roughly go along. We're about a third of the way down from the top. Remember thirds. Thirds are kind of our magic ratio that we want to kind of dig into. I'm just going to kind of soften this edge up. And all I do is I just wipe my brush off and just soften it up a bit. We'll come back later when we do the sky. We're actually going to paint the sky over this part. Yeah, these roads and a fence with a road is like one of my favorite little things to add to like this kind of a painting. It's a great way of getting some perspective into a painting and making it feel a little further away. This one's kind of interesting because the road and the fence kind of overlap each other quite a bit, but we still get the sense of what's going on. I spent a lot of time growing up. We had some friends who had a huge ranch in Central Oregon, 26,000 acres thereabouts. And we spent a lot of time kind of cruising around the back parts of their property. Not so much in the winter, it's hard to get to in the winter. But we did go over there and visit sometimes in the winter. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that, and that left a really an imprint on my mind and my life. And it was one of those things that now that I look back at those times we spent in those beautiful areas like that are really what influenced a lot of my desire to paint. Along with the fact that most of my family did some level of art, and I loved Bob Ross on PBS, which is our local broadcasting channel he was on. Now what I want to do is we're going to actually create like a little bit of a hazy glow in here. Now this is a little bit of a darker lavender than the original. That's all right. I'm going to tone it down, but I'm just going to take some white now. And this, you guys, this is really the key on getting like that kind of hazy look. I'm just going to brush some white in right beneath here, and you'll see I put a not a ton of paint, but just enough. It gets on there. And I'm just going to take this color now and just very lightly drag it up into our purple. I think in the original painting, the instructions, it shows this a little bit. It seems a little bit more of an intense barrier, and it will be when we get done. And just brush this up. This is a great way of separating the layers. Yeah, Bob definitely inspired a lot of people. I know it's kind of funny because we used to not really reference him per se, but it's kind of unavoidable in our line of work. But we had done some advertising a couple years ago. It was towards the end of 2021. And one of the pictures we did that we had a photo of was we had a mug this is my Starry Night mug, and we had a mug that was kind of similar to that, but it was a Bob Ross mug, and we had just taken a couple pictures of our setup, and there's the Bob Ross mug in there, and our marketing agency used that photo. And this was about the time that the big Netflix documentary about Bob Ross Inc. had come out and really painted the organization that has his name in a bad light, and I think it's probably a fair light to paint it in. Funny that I use the term paint, but because but people were going crazy on our advertisements. It's people were like posting all kinds of stuff on us about don't shop from these people, they're selling Bob Ross stuff, and Bob Ross Inc. is terrible, and we're like, we're not affiliated, we're not selling any Bob Ross products, we just have a mug. And it was really interesting because it was like, we're just a small company trying to make a living, and you guys are coming after us like we're doing something. And so we ended up taking those ads down just because and then we didn't want Bob Ross Inc. going, hey, these people are using our image. And anyway, so that's enough of that. All right. I'm going to mix up a little bit more of my lavender color, a little darker. This is no white in this, no raw sienna. It's just the turquoise and the red. And just going to brush this in. We're going to brush this down. This one's going to end up looking probably a little bit on the cooler scale from the original, and that's okay. You like how I just kind of like make excuses for myself as we go? It's like, yeah, well, this is the original that you guys have instructions, and this is going to look just a little tiny bit different. Oh, that documentary is actually really interesting. I'm trying to remember. There was a big celebrity, maybe it was Amy Schumer, who was behind the whole thing. And I mean, there's a lot of things I found out about Bob that was interesting. I don't know how true they are. I don't know if it changes how I feel about him. I don't think he was a bad person at all. I don't think he's to blame, but he just had some sides of his personality that you did not see on screen. He was apparently liked the ladies a bit, it sounds like, and liked fast cars. Of course, we all know now that he was in the military, so that's not a surprise. But yeah, it was interesting. I don't know if Jenny ever did watch it, but I watched it and I was like, oh, well, that's really an interesting thing. It's worth a watch. I wouldn't put a lot of weight into it, whether you... I know a lot of people kind of decided they didn't want to support Bob Ross Inc., but I mean, if you buy anything that has his image or name on it, it's... I think if you buy anything that has his name or image on it, they're getting paid. His son is not. That's kind of the basis of the documentary, is his son, whose name is Bob Ross, or Stephen Bob Ross is what his name is, and he's used to be on the show, and he's continued to do what his father did, but he can't even use his own full name, Stephen Bob Ross, when he promotes himself, because the name Bob Ross is trademarked to somebody else. And there's a lot of controversy about how that happened. Anyway, I don't want to ruin it all for you guys. It's not a long documentary. It's interesting. If Jenny were here, I would take my phone out and I would take a minute and look up and see who the actress is, the person who was behind it, who funded it. But I'm pretty sure it was... Maybe I'll look. Hold on. I'm going to look. Hold on. Let's see here. Bob Ross documentary. Netflix. Oh, it's not Amy Schumer. It's I'm almost there. Saw it. Just want to make sure. No, I don't want to do that. Melissa McCarthy is the comedian actress who was involved in producing that. I think that's who that is. I could be wrong. It happens to the best of us at times. Does he? I haven't seen it. There's actually, it's funny. It's like even Bob, he didn't innovate. He learned his techniques from another artist who was on TV before him. His last name is Anderson. What was his first name? But I remember seeing old shows of him on PBS back in the late 70s. Yeah, I'm that old. Actually, that shouldn't be a shock to anybody anymore. People used to be, oh, you don't look like you're in your 40s. And then my beard turned gray, and it was like, oh, you don't look like you're in your 40s. All right, so I'm just getting coverage down here. I want this whole thing to be covered. I also want to make sure we've kind of got some substance. So this is basically our underpainting is done. And I might need to get some more white paint here in a little bit. I gotta turn my watch notifications off. Hold on just a second. It's doing its nightly update, and I'm like, no, I need to have you on Do Not Disturb because it just keeps vibrating and it's annoying me. All right. So that's kind of a good place where we're at right now. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to get working back on our sky again. Yeah, that's exactly it. we're working with acrylics. So if you've watched Bob Ross, he worked with oils, and you could just play with stuff. The acrylics dry quickly, but the key is you kind of got to let them dry all the way before you get back at them, because if you get too get in there too, after it's kind of not quite, it's still not, okay, I need to speak English. I need to speak something. Let me just put it that way. As it starts to dry, it starts to feel dry, but it's not dry underneath, and it has a tendency of lifting back off the canvas. So what you have to do is make sure it dries all the way before you try to make adjustments. So I'm going to rinse my brush off really good right now. We're going to come back in. We're going to get on the sky a bit, because I want to soften this back up. I want to add a little bit more warmth to our sky up in the corners, and I do want to kind of bring a little bit of a softer cast in through here. We're going to do all that at once. This should be pretty dry. Yeah, if at any time, so here's the thing, if at any time you feel like it needs to dry for a minute, go ahead and put pause, go get a beverage, whatever, take a 5-minute break, and then come back in and get going, because the paint does dry fast, and it's a little difficult to make. It's definitely, you don't want to try to do it when it's still too wet if you're making a big change. So, all right. All right, so I'm mixing up a little bit of a warmer color. I'm going to add just a tiny bit of white to this. I don't need much because I'm not using a lot of paint on my brush. I just want to start very lightly. It's almost too much paint on my brush, but it'll work. If you get too much, you can always bring a little bit of white in. Yeah, I gotta rinse this off. I've got too much on the brush. Just kind of start up in these corners. Not a lot. My brush is wet, and it's something you can do too. I do this sometimes, is just kind of take a paper towel and just kind of smudge it up a bit. We're going to be working on this area quite a bit, so don't feel like it's like, oh, make or break at this point. I'm just going to bring in a little bit more of the raw sienna into that. Just needed a little bit more raw sienna. But mostly I'm kind of trying to get this left-hand side of the canvas, just have a little bit more warmth to it. I'm going to go ahead and brush a little bit of this over. See how that changes that area? Just taking a little bit of that warm color, just brushing it right over. All these little things are just little incremental changes, and to see that, just if you look at this side of the canvas versus this side, this extra little warmth just makes all the difference in the world. But it doesn't take away the feeling of being winter. There we go. Yeah, blow dryer is always a good thing to have on hand. I don't have one here because it just does all kinds. Well, I mean, I do, but it's not right here at the desk. But it's pretty much havoc on the microphones. Probably listening to me drink my coffee is too. All right, I'm going to rinse my brush really good again, because what we're going to do is all this color. I mean, you can see if you look at mine, it's pretty patchy. And that's okay. That's kind of the way I paint. If you've painted with me before, you know it's a little bit of organized chaos and mess, and that's just the way I paint. So it comes together in the end. All right, so I'm going to take a little bit more white in this area here. And I'm going to brush this out. Who knew that this process was so many little steps just in this one area? I don't know. I haven't decided if this is a sunset, sunrise. Is it just way up north and it's just the sun low in the horizon? We're just right almost exactly on the 45th parallel up here in Oregon. And December and January, sunny days are just so beautiful because everything on the ground just casts shadows. I mean, it's just, you see so much contour. It's really pretty. It's almost like taking a sunset shot all day long. So this right here feels a little bit like I feel like it's not really the canvas, but it feels like it to me. So I'm just going to take a little bit more of our raw sienna. And I'm not going to leave it like this. I just want to get a little bit of this color on here. And then hit this up with a little bit more white. There we go. Woo! Came down over the... I'm going to leave it. It's fine. It'll make more sense. We're actually going to cover part of that anyway. I thought about doing sun rays and stuff like that on this one, but I have found, or Jenny and I have both found, that sun rays and doing these types of things just doesn't, it's not a beginner type of thing. It's really hard to do. It's easier to do with oils. It's really hard to get it right. And the problem is it's always kind of like the last thing you do painting, and then people are like, I ruined it. And it's not really ruined, but it definitely can feel like it. All right, I gotta turn my phone off from vibrating. It's annoying me. It's so quiet in here, guys. You guys are doing good, but man, it's just silent. I'm in a business park in my warehouse at 6 o'clock at night our time, and there's nobody here. And yeah, glazing liquid helps, but the acrylics we use are already so thin. Glazing liquid can be a little bit challenging. You can use just regular water even to thin it out, but it's definitely a kind of thing that's like you want to play with it. Now, I always feel like a lot of times we don't spend enough time just playing with our paints and seeing what they do and stuff like that. So, all right, let's keep moving forward. I like how this is looking now. If I were to hold the original next to it, it's pretty darn close. Again, that's a little higher in the sky this time. That's all right. It is a little bit warmer if I do that. But when we get all done, I think it'll look better. It'll look fine. I'm pretty confident in my ability to make a painting look like a finished painting, even if it's not 100% a replication. I would be really bad at doing painting replicas, that's for sure. All right, so the next thing we're going to work on, we're going to work on these trees right here. And these trees are a new technique for me. I don't think we've ever taught paintings, with trees painted like this. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move my canvas off to the side a little bit so I can zoom in a little bit more focused on this area. I love having the zoom feature. This is really an upgrade. You see these up close and you realize there's really not a lot going on there, guys. I mean, you look at, there's no real trees. There's just smudges and that's about it. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you how we do it. This is how we do it. All right. Hopefully I didn't get too loud with that. I'm getting used to this new mic. It's one on my collar, so it's different. All right. So let me zoom out first. We're going to mix up our color. Just zoom that out. Let's just bring this over here real quick. It's going to be based on this color here. So we're going to start off with red. We're going to add a little bit of turquoise, a little bit more, a little bit more. There we go. Actually, it's more closer to that, but oh well. Who's counting? Who's checking? There's no paint color police out here tonight. All right. So this is kind of the color we're going for. It's kind of like a dark taupe kind of color. Maybe, yeah, I think that's the best way to explain it. Kind of a dark taupe-ish kind of color. It's like a warm purpley brown, if that makes sense. All right, so that looks like it's pretty well zoomed in. So I'm just gonna give it right about here. So all we do with this is I'm just gonna start on this outside edge. I'm just taking the brush. I'm gonna go up above this little section that's a little bit awkward feeling. And I'm just doing a lot of little Dan is here from the beginning of the painting. So he is back in time. We are in the future. And we're going to build this up. But this color that we're doing right now is just kind of our foundation color. And we're going to come across, I would like to think about the ranch I used to go to, they had a bunch of, they weren't birch, they must have been alder trees behind it. And they just kind of had this shape. This color is more important up here in the sky. Maybe scoop down a little bit here. But you can see I'm not really thinking about any specific. I'm not saying like, okay, we're going to put a tree here or here, or a tree here, or whatever. It's really just rough shapes that give us the impression, I'm going to zoom out just a smidge, that we recognize as being a row of trees. I'm going to pick a point, let's go right about here. We'll fix all this other stuff in the middle here, but this is kind of about where we kind of want this to just kind of fade out. And the bottom edge is just like so, in that kind of range. Sounds like I'm really specific on all this stuff, you can tell already. It's just, yeah, that's kind of ish and kind of sort of, and that's just the way I paint. I'm leaving a lot of gaps in here. And that's what you want to do. You don't want to get too full. You want it to feel like these are sparse trees that have lost their leaves. Or maybe it's like late fall and the leaves are still just kind of hanging out, waiting to fall. Or winter, early winter, sometimes they look like that too. And I'm just going to include a few little, I don't even want you to think about trunks or anything like that. Good night, Kim. Toddler granddaughter. Okay, yeah, I hear you on that one. Those kids are crazy first thing in the morning. What I'm trying to replicate here is, rather than thinking about, again, I don't like thinking about trees specifically, but what we are looking to do at this point is suggest vertical shapes that remind us of like tree trunks and things like that. It's really easy to get too involved in trying to make these look specifically like tree trunks, and we don't want to do that. That's too much work. All right, I'm going to mix up I'll bring my palette over real quick. I'm mixing up turquoise, red, and go a little bit more turquoise. I'm going to add a little bit of raw sienna, a little bit more turquoise. I'm going for this kind of darker color. That's what we want right there. Maybe, nope, there we go. I'm going to wipe off a little bit. I don't want all that on there. And what we're going to do is we're going to start kind of out at the base of our trees. Just kind of scrub this color in across. And what I like to do is I like to take this color now and just kind of blend it out into the bottom. We can always darken this up if we want to a little bit later. I know the original looks like I've added a little bit of black, and I think I did that later. I'm actually going to take this color all the way across here, guys. And ladies and gentlemen. And I'm just going to add a little bit of this extra streaking. You want this lower shadow and the shadows that kind of creep up into the trees a little bit to feel connected. You don't want them feeling disconnected. I call this grounding. I don't know if that's the right term for it, but to me, I feel like what we're doing is we're taking these trees or this grove of trees and we're grounding it and connecting it to the ground without actually painting like, here is where the tree grows out of the soil. You know, that gets a little too detailed. We had a lot of fun this week. Our daughter had gotten recruited to do makeup for the local community theater's production of Rocky Horror Picture Show. And they were a little understaffed. And the art department needed help finishing some of the sets, and the glam squad, which is the makeup and hair department, needed more help, and so Jenny was helping with both of those elements, and then I was helping. I've gone in 3 nights this week and helped with the set painting, and Jenny's posted some of our pictures on the... Oh, zoom out, you got it. Sometimes I like to zoom in so you can see the details. Oops, that's the wrong way. Jenny likes to, Jenny was posting pictures on the GoBox group page showing you guys what we got going on, and it was a lot of fun. If you see the picture of the castle door on there, and I painted all the rocks, and I really spent like 2.5 hours on the whole project. So I was pretty happy with that. All right, just going to smudge that out. So that's kind of like all we've got going on in this part. You don't want to get... We'll come back and we'll do some highlights on the trees a little bit later. Yeah, I guess I painted over on this side without being zoomed out. Sorry about that, guys. I just took that same color and just kind of smudged it in and around here. In fact, I'm going to take a little bit more of that same color real quick. It's that darker color. Let me bring my palette in. There you go. It's just the turquoise red and a little bit of sienna. There we go. And just kind of, oh, got a lot of red on my brush there. Now I'm actually going to mix up some more of that color anyway, because I'm going to switch over to my biggest brush. And we're just going to kind of lay some of this down in our foundation area in the foreground. And what that does for us is, right now we've kind of painted a middle tone. And what we need to do, again, it's just the dark, mostly turquoise and red with just a bit of the sienna. We want to start laying in some darker shadowing in here. Let me see if this is the point where we... Yeah, I haven't quite gotten to the... Good. I'm glad to hear you're doing good. I'm so used to people saying like in our studio when people would come in, that people like, because they're in front of other people, I think they put excess pressure on themselves. And so often people are like, oh, I'm really bad at this. And it's so refreshing to hear somebody saying, I'm doing good. I don't know if I've told my story about Stuart, but Stuart was my favorite student I ever had in the studio. I'm just adding some of this in and around down here. I like to get a dark base for our snow to sit on top of. So that's what we're doing. Stuart used to come in. He was in the Big Brother, Big Sister, or the Big Brother program. I guess Big Brother, Big Sister, and he was one of 4 autistic children from one family. And his favorite thing in the world was Bob Ross. And so his big brother, I think his name was Dan. Yeah, it was Dan. Not our friend Dan, a different Dan. But Dan would bring him in to paint. And Stuart was amazing because Stuart was about 6'5" and about 270, 280 pounds. He was a big kid. I think he was about 17 or so. And he would get started painting and he would just be like, look at me, guys, look at me. I'm doing it. I'm just doing it just like Bob Ross. And he would be in there with like 30 other painters and everybody would be just totally, like, anybody who was having a bad day stopped having a bad day because they saw Stuart just being like, this is the best thing that's ever happened in my life. And they just kind of put it in perspective, like, this is really a wonderful thing that we get to do here. And it was funny, one day I was wearing a Bob Ross t-shirt under my flannel and I unbuttoned my shirt and I was like, Stuart, look. And I opened my shirt and showed him the Bob Ross and he laughed so hard and so loud. And I miss Stuart. He was a fun kid. Seeing somebody be so happy with something is just amazing. And by the way, I don't know if you guys are seeing this developing right now. This painting right now could so easily be turned into a really cool, like, stream flowing through, like I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the water here and it's picking up the light in the sky and it's just building. And there's some things going on with this new one that have some advantages over the old one. I'll bring the old one back, and the old one's good. It's got a lot of good things going. But when I start seeing the bones that are happening here, this to me is a little bit more exciting. We can work with this. And that's one of the things I like to do when I'm painting, especially like a landscape, is like, it is a process. You work on it, you work on it, you work on it, you develop, you let the painting and what you've already done speak back to you about what needs to happen next. That's my philosophy, at least. All right, I'm going to switch now to my number 4 brush. I think this is our first brush change, you guys. I guess we used the number 8 over here, but I probably forgot to mention that. But you can use any brush for doing the trees there. I'm going to switch to my number 4 because we're going to work on these trees here, these here trees. And we're going to use the same color that we were just using to darken things up. And what I would like to, I'm going to zoom in really quick on the canopy. I think we're doing pretty good on time. I hope. You can see the trees. If we look into, let's look at this one. I like this one. We have one main trunk that kind of comes up. We have a secondary branch that comes off of it, maybe another couple secondary branches. And then we have just a lot of small brush strokes, and I'll show you how we do that. We're going to use our smallest brush for a lot of those. But what the main thing is, if you'll notice, almost all these branches, they're moving away from the main trunk, and in general, they're moving up. I've got a couple, like one here that's moving a little bit down. That's all right. What you want to avoid is having branches that come back and towards the trunk. That looks really, like down and towards the trunk, that looks really awkward. So you'll notice I don't have that on either of these trees. And it's just something that I really try to point out. It can get really awkward and uncomfortable. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. There we go. We're going to use the same color, maybe add a little bit of this. Just mixing, just so you guys can see. All right. All right, that works. I don't need a lot of paint on the brush, so I'm going to wipe off any extra. Light touch, guys. We don't want to push down very hard. And in my opinion, like this painting, you could get by with one tree. And that's always my advice when we're doing trees that are a little bit more precise. Do one first. Like one of the things that can get really frustrating when you're learning how to paint is going, oh, I'm going to paint 3 trees, and you go in and you paint 3 trunks, and then the first one is really difficult because you're learning and you're kind of stressed because it's not going perfect, and then you look down and you've got 2 more trunks that you got to put branches on. And I would like to try to avoid that type of feeling of panic, make it a more comfortable process. So 1 tree at a time, that's it. I'm going to use my number 4. I'm going to start with the brush on edge. I always think trees grow from the ground up. A lot of people like to go down, but for the trunk, I'm just going to take this brush mostly up. I'm going to go just a smidge above my horizon. That's my 1 main branch. Now at any point, if you feel more comfortable using a smaller brush, you can do it after this main trunk. I'm thinking of this being fairly rounded. There's going to be, let's go a secondary trunk or branch right here. I try to avoid, you can add just a touch of water to your paint to thin it down a little bit. I try to avoid having multiple branches come out of the same junction. Two, you can, it's not a big deal if you get 3 on this painting, but 2 is kind of like optimal. I'm going to go ahead and switch now to my smallest brush. And again, I've added a little bit of water to my paint so it's really thin, because you don't need it to be dark. You just need it to show up. That's it. It doesn't have to be this big, bold, extravagant thing. I'm going to zoom in so you guys can really see this up close. All right. Watch out for drips on your brush. I'm going to add a little bit of kind of supporting structure. It's okay if you come back and you start out. Oh, my eyes kind of crossed a little bit when I did that. That's all right. I'm not going to worry about it. Nobody's going to notice. This is why I don't like detail. My eyes kind of cross a little bit sometimes. I'm actually going to take my glasses off. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Should have brought my computer glasses. And I'm just going to, it's really easy to get a drip of water on your ferrule here and not, so just be careful that you don't end up with that, because it'll drip down on your canvas and then it's a mess. But anyway, now you can just kind of come in, do all kinds of shapes and structure. I'm not even remotely thinking about where they're connecting or anything. But if you don't do very many of these, it ends up looking, and that's fine, it's up to you, but it ends up looking spooky and desolate. And there's nothing wrong with that, because it could be like an old ghost town kind of road or something like that. It doesn't matter. But if you want it to not feel quite so spooky is the main thing. You want it to feel more just wintry, do more. Yeah, just a little bit more water to my paint. I'm using very little paint. I like to take my brush, I'm going to put this right here, and you can see this is about the thickness that it is. And I like to take my brush and just kind of pull it and drag, I will make sure I dry off the ferrule on a rag. But by pulling and dragging through the paint, it helps keep the tip. I'm almost getting to the point where I've done too much. So there's one. Let's zoom out. I'm going to take a little bit of this color, just kind of pop it into the ground here. I'm going to go ahead and do the second one. What you want to do is, as we move away from this center part of the painting and move out, you want to go taller, and you want to go higher, and you want to go lower on the canvas. You don't have to go as much lower, but you do want it to go bigger, because what it does is then it creates this idea that everything's disappearing in the distance here. So let's go ahead and mix up a little bit more of that color. I'm going to put my glasses back on. A little tiny bit of our sienna. And let's go, if you had no trouble, you could do, so the original painting has two. I think in the instructions I said one is, like this painting, like right now, one would be fine. You could leave it like that. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm going to add the second one. It's too many branches. I did a lot. I'm going to go ahead and do a second tree because that's what the original painting is. But I think even on my instructions, I said, add a third one if you want to. And you can do like a third one just really hugging the edge. But that's something that's, up to your comfort level as to whether you want to. But I think one is fine, two's fine. Three might get a little crowded feeling would be the biggest thing. You could do another one, smaller in the background if you wanted to. So let's go ahead. I'm going to start at the top this time. This is a bigger tree. And it branches. Let's do another branch there. If you could do like a whole bunch of these trees, kind of like mimic this feeling over here, and you could just do branches that don't even make sense with the individual trees because they're just part of a big mass. I need to take a sip here. Boom. I am still getting over my cold, so my voice is still a little groggy. All right, same thing. You want the same basic shape, but you want it to feel like it's a different tree. So make sure you're not just painting a replica. Just keep going. Have at it. Don't be afraid to add that little bit of water. It does a couple things. It helps the paint flow a little finer on the fine tip brush, and it also makes it not quite so bold. Check for the droplets. If you wanted to do a fir tree on this too, because you're more comfortable with it, do it. That's fine. It's your painting. I hope you guys, I just burped and I hope you didn't hear that. I'm sorry. Too small and a big. That works. That works. That works. So I got this one branch up here that's kind of dark, and so I'm going to have to add a little hint of that color elsewhere. There's no painting over that and making it disappear. So maybe it won't be as noticeable when we're all done. Probably not. See how we're doing on time. We're doing good. So one of the things that I've noticed too is we have a tendency of being a little bit afraid of the edge of the canvas. And so it's okay to go ahead and drag that color a little further over. You know, drag some branches over a little closer. Even if it goes off the canvas a bit, it won't hurt anything. Here's a little breakaway. Oh, this right here, actually, this would be a good branch to put Jenny's cardinal on. And I'll show you how we're going to do that, because it's optional. If you guys get the subscription box and you got last week, we did the Cozy Cardinal or whatever it was called. I think it was called Cozy Cardinal. Winter Cardinal? I can't remember. A lot of times Jenny and I try to incorporate elements of each other's paintings into our paintings, and so she kind of mimicked the sky and used the colors that I had used. So I'm going to add a cardinal in here later, and I think I'm just going to put it on that branch right there. I feel like that's the spot. And it's actually, let's just go ahead and add it now. I'm just going to take a little dot of red paint, and I'll zoom in so you can see it. There's our cardinal hanging out on the tree. It's not much, but it's just a fun little thing that we like to do. So let's see. All right, so next step, we're going to actually really like how this looks through here, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our road in. And so I'm going to mix up same color we've been using. This time I'm going to add just a tiniest dot of black. The black goes a long ways. There we go. And a little bit more turquoise. I don't want it to be too... We don't want red snow. That would be bad. Yeah, it was Cozy Cardinal. Okay, that's good. You guys have to keep in mind that over the last, gosh, almost 12 years now, Jenny and I have probably taught 400 or 500 different paintings. And sometimes those names kind of have a tendency of blending together a bit. All right, so I'm going to start with my track for my road, kind of right about here, and it's going to end just a little bit above the canvas. Think more lateral than up and down. And I think the bottom part of it, again, we're just going to start right at the same spot. I'm going to actually take this up a little bit higher. That may be that area. Okay, I'll tell you what. I liked that area because of what it did and how it looked. We're getting ready to design our paintings for next month. I'm going to incorporate that idea into next month. And that way I will not feel so bad about painting over that area right now. So I'm just making this kind of triangle. Mix up a little bit more paint. Always mixing paint. Again, that's kind of where Jenny and I differ. She tends to make enough paint at once. I tend to be a little bit more conservative in that regard. There you go. I'm also going to take a little bit of this color right at the base of these trees. And then while that's still wet, I'm going to take a little bit more on my brush, but I'm just going to Just kind of drag some of that up in there. We'll come in with our snow in a bit, and like this little area right here where I got a little bit carried away, we'll fix that. I'm going to take a little bit of this color now too and just kind of add, like maybe there's some shrubs or part of the field over here. It does right now. It totally looks like a bridge over a stream at this point. I get tell you guys like a deep secret, maybe a deep secret. I feel like all landscapes kind of start the same, and then they develop into being this, that, or the other. You know, like when I sit down to do a painting, usually I have a pretty good idea, like when I'm developing for in here, you know, what am I going to paint for this week or this month? And I'll have an idea of what it is, but usually getting close to half of the way, it's all the same process with just little adjustments for what the finish is going to be. All right, so let's go ahead and let's add a little bit of snow. We'll come back and we'll do the fence later. So I'm going to mix up, I'm going to find a little clear spot right here. Just turquoise and red, more turquoise than red. Want it to, again, be our lavender, but it wants to feel a little on the cool side. I'm going to add some white. There we go. And we'll come back in, we'll, like, part of the time when I'm doing this, where I'm adding these extra little shadows and stuff, is I'm starting to build up an area that, like I'm adding shadows and stuff like that early on, rather than trying to think about, okay, how am I going to make shadows now? Well, I start adding these shadows and stuff early, and then I have some contours that I can look at and say, okay, I can add a little bit more here. And a lot of this is actually going to get covered up. So we're just using our biggest brush. Snow is I think, is difficult to paint as a whole. So don't feel bad if you struggle with this. It is not my strong suit. So I kind of just try to think about the snow piling, the way snow piles. And so, yeah, I got a little bit, this feels a little too vertical. We're going to take this right across here. We can always bring the path back in. There we go. And I always think, like when I'm looking across a field or something, I'm thinking more that my brush work is going to be more side to side than up and down, because when you look across a field or a body of water or anything, you're going to see more horizontal planes than you're going to see vertical. And that's just the way, because the world, everything is designed to stand up and down on a flat surface. So all right. So I didn't mix my color together real thoroughly, and that's why we're getting a lot of little variation, and that's actually really good. That's a good thing. Add a little bit more white. We'll come back and add some more of the white and stuff. Yeah, this is looking good. I'm happy with the way this is developing. Nice thing about this color pattern, this color scheme that we're using is we can, it's really easy to make adjustments. The sky is kind of locked in. You know, if you want to redo the sky, that's a big commitment because you're going to have to come in and work it around these trees and things like that. You can make some changes up around the edges if you wanted. Like I've got a little bit of mine feels a little bit canvassy. You can see I didn't quite get all the way up on the edge. That's something I could do, but what I would do is I'd change out my water, get a fresh brush, fresh towel, and start with fresh mixed paint to make that adjustment. And I'm not going to want to use this paint water because it's gonna taint it a little bit. And actually up here it wouldn't be that bad because it is darker and it would just kind of blend in. But you have to think it's if you're fixing something this big, you're actually going to be fixing something more like that big. So, all right. So, next step we're going to do, let me just see where we're at. Yep, we're in a good spot. We're just kind of in, we're kind of getting ready to go down that final lap of finishing this painting up. This maybe doesn't feel like it right now, but we are. I'm going to switch over to my number 8 brush. And I do want to kind of re-pick up where this road is going. So I'm going to mix up that color again. Again, that's just the turquoise and red. Add a little bit of sienna and a touch of black. And I like to not be too precise. So I'm just going to kind of have that let me look at the original. Yeah, if you look at the original, it kind of just disappears right before the horizon. So I'm just going to kind of smudge that out. That's one of the hardest things to paint, is like a river or a road or anything like that. Like, how does it disappear? Well, the easiest way to do is kind of hide it. Like make it feel like it's kind of coming around a little mound of snow or something here. Because it's really hard to do it in a way that makes sense. So I'm just taking a little bit of this dark color. I'm just adding a little extra dark. At the base of these trees, you can drag this color up a little bit on the trunks. So the other thing is when we put it in our fence, it's going to kind of hide that. So I do want to put like ruts though. So I'm going to mix up a little bit more of our snow color foundation. If I'm bouncing around too much, let me know. All right, so here's my snow foundation. Could have been a little darker. That's all right, it won't hurt anything. Just adding that little rut like that. Boy, that's color so off. Little too blue, a little too turquoise, I should say. And just add a little bit of red to that mix. There we go. Don't make it too crisp. Don't make it too crisp. Yeah, there we go. That's better. I'm happier with that. Of course, you can always take some of that color in your bigger brush. Add some all over. We're almost done, guys. Comes together fast. Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us. All right, so I'm ready to start adding some bigger, bolder highlights in our snow. And one of the things that we can start doing is we can start looking at our light source. I guess I didn't put the sun in, so I'm going to do that real quick. I just like to take a little bit of white on my index finger. I'm going to put it right about here. There we go. Whew, that's a bolder sun than the original, but we'll live with that. That's fine. If you needed to smudge it out a little bit more, you could, but I'm not a big fan of such a hard line. There we go. There. I'm happy with that. Now we can look at this and where the sun, like everything's going to cast from the center of the sun is going to be where our shadows go. So what I like to do is I'm going to take just a little bit of white. I'm going to add it to our mix of that we used for our snow. We're just going to lighten that up a little bit more. And I'm going to look at like, okay, this sun is going to cast a shadow of this tree, and I line it up with the base. So if I were to like go like middle of the sun to the base of the tree, it's going to go like this. So I'm just going to kind of work either side. You could always paint the shadow in later. Now this one over here, the shadow is going to be going at a much sharper angle. But it always starts at the base. Maybe just dab a little texture in there where the branches are. These trees are not going to cast shadows, they're behind. So we're just going to get in. And when I'm doing like these background, like this is a great time right now. This back here needed to be softened up. And now that's softened up. That makes more sense. I like to make this be jagged and uneven because there's trees and shrubs and all kinds of things going on there. And we'll come back and we'll just give it a little smooch, a little kiss of some extra white on there and some spots. We want it to have some shimmer to it. I'm just gonna, okay, so this part, this rut, we're gonna be a little bit more what I would call the top, but it's gonna be the left edge is where this is getting a little extra white. I'm gonna mix up, add a little bit more white here. I'm gonna do a little bit more. So the more different variations of color that you have, of lightness and darkness and shadows and highlights in snow, the more it's going to be interesting to look at. As long as they're all within the right tones. I mean, we're kind of using this kind of warmer, it's picking up the warmth of the sky, so it's not going to be this like super cold snow field. But the more you add to this, the more you add little bits and things. It's really easy to just paint like a white. Just like, oh, it's snow, let's just paint it white. Okay, that's really easy to do. But it doesn't look right. And the reason is when you look at a snow field, there's all kinds of texture. This is laying over, you know, a wheat field or something like that, where there's clumps that are laying down and there's undulation. It's not just a perfectly flat surface. I'm going to leave this bottom corner just a little darker. I tend to like to do that. All right. I'm leaving this little dark barrier. I feel like, to me, that's the backside of some shrubs. Maybe it's a wall. It actually almost looks like it could be a brick wall or a stone wall that's kind of like came down from maybe from the house, and then there's the fence that goes along here. Speaking of our fence, I'm going to let this dry a little bit. We're going to add some highlights just to the tops of these trees, and then we're going to come in and put our fence in. Then we're going to do last bits of highlights, and then we'll be done. So I am going with my handy dandy number 8. I'm just going to take a little tiny bit of just raw sienna and make sure I don't have any drips getting ready to come off my brush like I did have. What this does, I'm going to zoom in so you can see what's going on, see why we do this. There we go. Sound effect included. You're welcome. Just going to take a little bit of this raw sienna, and what this does is it softens this edge up in the sky. So it makes it doesn't take away the separation, but it helps it feel a little bit softer, a little bit more inviting. I don't know if inviting is the right word. Integrated, that's a better word. Feels a little bit more integrated with what's going on. It also brings a little bit more of our warmth down from our sky. And you can just literally do the same technique we did before, just do some streaks. You don't want to come down very far though. But you also want to make sure that you're doing enough randomly that it's not just like sitting on top and not doing anything else. Just do a little bit here. Maybe these are the buds on the trees getting ready to sprout out here in a few weeks. I don't know. I haven't decided. But again, you can see that's not really that much going on. There's not a lot of detail when you look at it up close. I'm going to zoom right in. Look, that's just a mess. I'm going to zoom out. Oh, look at that. It's trees. How about that? Amazing how that works. All right, let's talk about our fence. I like to start at the back for the fence and work my way closer. And there's a little trick to this. Basically, we've already got a line that the fence is going to follow at the bottom. And you're going to want your fence to follow that line. And then you want it to be always just a smidge taller than your road as we get farther away, and you want them to be further and further away from each other. The most difficult thing that we've encountered in teaching this type of thing, whether it's a road, a path, a river, is we automatically want to do 90-degree angles from the road. It's just something that happens. And even though I've taught in person and I've been very adamant, we're going straight up and down. There's always people that tend to go like this. We don't want that. So we're going to start close to our edge of our canvas so we can go parallel, and then parallel to the edge. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's, close. Because there's an old fence, it could lean a little bit. It's not going to hurt anything. If they all lean in the same way, it's going to be like, okay, the next windstorm's going to knock that thing over. But that's okay too. But I'm going to move in about an inch, and I'm going to start, and I think we're just going to use some pure black on this. I don't know what I said on the instructions, but we're just going to use, what we'll use is black with a little bit of turquoise and a little bit of raw sienna. So let me show you that. I'm just going to take some black. I'm going to use my number 4. Little raw sienna. I mean, that's turquoise. Let's add a little raw sienna to that. Gives us a nice kind of dark grayish, kind of weathered color. And I'm just going to start, if you guys want to, you know, give yourself a reference point. Let's say, oh, you can measure in if you want. I'm just going to freehand it here. We move in about 1 inch. And just go a little bit above. Now I'm going to move, let's go maybe 2 inches or so. Pretty close to vertical. And we're just going to try to, maybe this one's a little taller. Feel like we're just getting incrementally a little closer together. Sometimes maybe this is where the farmer enters the field, so there's a bigger gap there. I'm just going to keep going all the way until that goes right up a little bit into my horizon line, and maybe we just go one more. A little thick, that's all right. I'm not going to worry about it. Nobody's going to know. Now, the other thing is I'm going to go ahead, take the same color, do some of these are right on line with the track, and maybe that's all right. Maybe it's just a fence. Maybe it's not a road. Let's go a little higher there. You can alternate heights. Sometimes you see fences and they do that. This one though, this is a X. No, I didn't forget. I'll get it. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but you'll see in a minute. Maybe this one's broken. This needs to continue off the page, or off the canvas. All right, good enough. We'll put a little bit of snow on each of those. That'll kind of help it stand out a little bit more. But speaking of snow, let's go ahead. We're gonna go all in. We're gonna get some white on here. And if you want to start with your number 8 further away, I totally recommend that. You could even use your number 4. And the reason is sometimes, like, if we do smaller brush strokes in the distance, like we're back here and we're going to throw a little bit of some shimmer. We do littler pieces back there, and then as we move forward we get bigger and bigger, and then when we get down into this area we start using our biggest brush. It makes more sense visually because things get smaller as they move away from us. So it's important to remember, a big brush stroke in the distance is going to look like a big object. And it's okay if you do it, make a big blob with a small brush. And just start sketching some of this in here. Maybe do a little bit over here. Leaving our shadows from our trees. You just have to figure out, where's your comfort zone? Where's your point that you feel like, okay, I'm having to make the brush do too much to get this color in here. We'll come back in and we'll paint the shadows in of the fence. But here we've got like the tree canopy, the branches. So I'm just gonna add a few little dabs of, there's a little spot just popping through. And do a little bit over here. But maybe this is a slope down from over here, so it's not going to get quite as much. The trees aren't casting shadows, but it's a slope, so it's not going to catch quite as much of the sun directly, so it's going to be a little softer over here. But this area right through our middle here, this is getting the sun. We're going to just keep working on it. This area is going to have quite a bit. Careful of your fences. It's all right. I mean, they're easy enough to fix. We got, excuse me, again, just still getting over this cold, and it just blah, blah, blah. Quit your whining, Paul. Just paint. Okay, you got it. Oh, don't do that noise either. Sorry. I'm so sorry. We don't want to make it over there too bold, so we're going to leave that like that. I'm going to take, you can even use your number 8 if you need to, but I'm just going to add a little bit to the center part of our cart path or whatever it is here. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my bigger brush, my biggest brush here. Make sure it's nice and clean. Just some pure white. But you can see as I'm working, I'm not trying to cover the whole thing. I'm not just painting it all white. I got a little bit of some warm color popping through there. I'm adding white and it covers some of it. But I don't want to paint all those little different textures and colors and tones of white that we've added in. I don't want to get rid of all those. That's a lot of work that we put in. And again, I want to kind of leave this bottom corner a little bit dark. Like maybe there's, it could have, I really thought about putting a shrub or something there. But I felt like, that's just one too many things. Let's bring this right on down like that. All right. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some snow on our fence beams. Just going to, you can use your biggest brush if you feel comfortable with it. You might need to use a little bit smaller brush as you get further away. Maybe you just do that and call it good. Whatever works for you. If you don't know what works for you yet because you're new, play around a little bit. maybe start with a smaller brush and try that first. If that's feels like it's taking a lot of work, go to up a little bit. Let's do a little dab of snow on the top of each of these. Make sure you guys, if you're regulars and or if you're just interested in learning about what we do, head on over to Facebook and check out our group page. We do have a company page as well, but check out our group page. It's a great place to see how everybody's doing. Jenny and I post a lot more about we post about the business, of course, but we also post, about what's going on in our lives. And when we transitioned from being the Sip and Paint studio to being what we are now, we wanted to make sure that we didn't lose the one-on-one feel, like the aspect of being, like, we're not a big company. We're just a husband and wife who like to paint and like to share what we've learned. And we want to make sure that comes through to people, that's who we are. We're not a giant. We're not Amazon. We're not, obviously Amazon's stretching it a bit, but we're not a big corporation. And so by focusing on our Facebook group rather than our page, it enables us to be a little bit more like involved and hands-on and like, hey, this is who we are. So that's what we like our company to be represented as now. All right, I'm going to mix up a little bit of turquoise and red to just kind of give us a nice purple color of the day. I'm going to add just a little tiny bit of water because I want it to be thinned down. Now this is a little bit of a challenge because we're going to be looking at where each fence post, from the bottom of the fence post to the middle of the sun, goes at an angle about like so. Next one a little bit further. And if you need to use a longer straight edge, you can. You get down to these ones and they're almost... That one's off a little bit. It's all right. Won't hurt anything. Nobody's going to notice. You can kind of get a feeling for how that's going to change as you go. If you feel like you need to put the cross beams on there, you can as well. I don't think you really need to. I don't think a lot of people are going to notice if you don't do that. So, let me see. I think we're done. Oh, wait. I'm done. I don't think I missed anything. Let me know. Did I miss anything? I'm going to go ahead and sign my painting. And I'm going to zoom out and compare the two. Sign it right here. Ooh, just white. I'm going to get some stuff out of the way, do some housekeeping here, and have a sip of coffee. Thank you, Caravan Coffee, not a sponsor. But maybe someday. They are my neighbor. So let's zoom out a bit. There's the one I just painted. Here's the original. Pretty close. I think what I did, one thing that's a little different. Oh, wait, hold on. There's one more thing to do. But before I do that, this is maybe a little too, maybe not soft enough. Whatever. If it isn't, you can just, I could just take some of the lavender color and just kind of smudge it out. You can even just use your fingertip to smudge some on top. There is one last little thing. I've got these little birds here. And I want to show you guys how to do that, because people love to put birds in skies, and it is easy but difficult. Let's zoom in real close. Focus. There's our sky. What I'm going to do, I'm going to bring my palette in. Right there. I'm going to use my smallest paintbrush. Our instinct is usually just to paint them black, but that is too bold, guys. I'm telling you. Use as little black as you can when you're painting landscapes. That's my personal preference here. So, the reason is there's not a lot of just plain, just jet coal black in nature. There is, but it's not very often. I'm going to take a little bit of red. I'm going to take some sienna. Mix up this kind of darkish orange color. I'm going to take my brush and twist it. And what we're going to do is we're just going to do a couple, and this is a little bit on the red side, so maybe this is the cardinals, but we're just going to do a couple of really tiny V shapes. There's one. And do one more right over here. That's really small, but that's all you really need, because then when I zoom out, if I were to do black, even that color I just did is almost too bold. But the more I zoom out, the less obvious it is. But you can see how small those are. Just doing a couple of those, you could even just use regular plain raw sienna if the sky is really light. But just a couple. That one's maybe a little too close to the center of the canvas. Maybe over here would have been better, but that's okay. It's fun to do birds, and it's really easy to get too carried away and do a bunch. I think 2 or 3 max. You don't really need to do more than that. So anyway, let me zoom back out here a little bit. Again, I'm gonna put them side by side. Yeah, that's not too bad. I'm happy with my results. So anyway, guys, I am going to come back up. Hey, I'm back. So thanks for joining me tonight, you guys. Again, my name is Paul. I'm with the Go Box Art Crate. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that stuff. If you're really interested in doing what we do, check out our website, gobox.com. We do sell a monthly subscription box that we send out 2 projects per month. This was our 2nd project this month. And you can see right over my shoulder, there, that's the Cozy Cardinal we did last week. And we send out the canvas, the paint. First month that you sign up, you will get brushes. And we're going to start sending new brushes out, I think, to people about every 6 months or so. Just because they do wear out, and you can always get your own brushes. It doesn't matter. Just, I actually recommend you play around with other brushes that you don't necessarily come with a kit. And expensive brushes are overrated. They do a good job at what they do, but I'm a big, huge fan of cheap hog hair brushes and things like that. Outside of that, make sure you like us over at the Facebook group. Check us out on Instagram, all that stuff. It's all Go Box Art Crate. You'll find us wherever you look. And we will see you next month. If you go on the Facebook group, I know I'm pushing it, but that's where we send out our information. That's where we reveal the new paintings. And if you go to our website, we've been doing this since 2019, so we're getting close to 4 years of doing this, and every month we do 2. So do the math. We're closing in on 100 paintings on the website that can be ordered. And we're going to start working on getting some others as well. So thanks for hopping in with me tonight, you guys, and we will see you next time. Bye.